Greetings, and welcome, guys. Thank you all for joining. So, slowly, you guys are coming in today. Today, I decided to do this special episode whereby I am really more so focused on just answering some questions, some FAQs that I get from time to time, especially repetitive questions. So, I chose 16 of the top questions that I've gotten over this past year. We're just going to go through those, and definitely I will be taking in some other questions that you may have as we go along. So this is not a focused or a themed topic like we normally do. So definitely, if you are watching live, feel free to go ahead and put your questions, your inquiries, what have you, inside of the chat wherever you may be, and we will get to them. If you are watching a replay, let us know if you have more questions and we'll try to get to them as well. This is more so, again, an open discussion, open FAQ session. Okay, guys? Greetings aside you. Thank you for joining as always. Thank everybody who is coming in also on, well, every platform. I can't see everybody everywhere, but greetings and thank you all for coming. So I'm just going to jump right in. So we're talking about first just the foundations of Ifá and the practice, some questions that I get along that route from time to time. Well, often I should say, because these are like the most asked questions here. Greetings, Libra Moon, peace, alafia to you. So let's just go ahead and start with some of these questions. One of the primary questions I get quite often is how much does someone plan for Ebo before getting an Ifá reading? And for individuals who don't know, Ebo is the sacrifice, the offerings that you do that will come up in the reading. And this is probably the foremost question that I get from people quite often. Let's see. Greetings, Alafia, Benjamin. Thank you for joining us as well. So, as I've said before in other live streams, and this might be a repeat for some of you all who watch me regularly, it will be a repeat because I say a lot of these things quite often. As far as pricing goes for Ebo, there's no universal standard like that everybody should charge this particular amount for their Ebo. It does vary significantly, guys, very much so significantly. So what I always encourage people to do is before you get an Ifá reading from someone, you reach out to them and maybe get their an average, right? Because it's not always going to be exactly what it is. People can't tell you beforehand, number one, what it is going to be if they are doing like the traditional Isheshe based Ifá divination. If they're giving you a price beforehand, that's because they've already planned out what offerings that they are going to give, which is not traditional protocol, right? So you definitely want something. You want to get a reading and get the Ebo afterwards, right? And I know that can be trying or cumbersome, but maybe some people are open to this. I'm not saying that everybody is, but some people are open to sharing a price range, and that's usually what they'll do. They'll give you a price range of what that looks like and tell you about their particular process, right? But keep in mind, prices can vary so much, and I try to discourage this type of behavior from going from one place to the next when it comes to this. And a person saying, well, this person charged me this over here, or this person does it like this over here. Everybody has their own standard and their own measures. Understand too that when it comes to the price of the sacrifices and offerings, you're not always just paying for that. You're also paying for the service. You're definitely paying for the labor that goes into the process. But what I mean by service is additional follow-up or follow through, because some people do have that. We personally do. We offer a lot of help in the follow-up aspect because for us, well, traditionally, period, about the sacrifices is not just about the act, not just about the ritual work. It's about understanding how it plays out over time. Most of the time, you're going to have some type of dreams or phenomena. It might not be dreams per se, it could be visions or just intuitive nudges afterwards, where you're getting heightened messages from the orishas once you perform the ebo. So in our process specifically, we like to walk through that particular process with people that we work with so that they understand, what's going on, and we try to interpret those messages when they come through the dream state. We also like to follow up and answer different questions that they may have specific to the reading or the about thereafter. So this is our process. Again, everybody's process is different. And again, understand that the price of the sacrifices and offerings can vary so much because of this reality, because everybody's price process is very much so different. Okay, so let's see if you have some budgetary constraints or something like that, you can usually complete this in stages. Again, it depends on the person's process. Ours is that we do offer you the opportunity to complete it over time. We strongly suggest that you do it as soon as possible, because that's another question that often comes up. When should I complete my ebo? How much time do I have? Start on it, right? If you can't complete everything, ask about, if you're working with somebody, definitely if you're working with us at our temple, ask, what are the most important ones that I need to do right now? Get started on that process. Once you do, you can work through it over time and it's still applicable. If you don't start working on it, especially within the first 17 days, then you're going to have to get another reading after that. But if you do start working on it within that 17-day window, then you can still follow up and finish it later on, because the orishas are seeing your effort and they know that you are working through that process. Again, if you want the results that are outlined from the reading, it's best to do it all, right? But we understand, that's how it goes sometimes with people's circumstances. It just really and truly depends, right? You should do it as soon as possible, for sure. And that's another question. Like, when should I do it? As soon as possible. If you can do it that same day, that would be great. Okay. So that's the standard, traditional process, is to go ahead and complete it. If you're unsure whether you're ready for a full reading or not, a spiritual investigation, like just asking basic questions instead of getting a full on do pull for you, asking, I won't say basic questions, but specific questions or direct questions, yes or no questions, that can be helpful sometimes whenever you're not ready for a full on the full on ebo, because the full reading is going to pull an Odu. And the Odu is definitely going to bring forth the sacrifices and the offerings that you need. And usually they can range from 4 to 6, even so more sometimes, orishas. It can include other prescriptions like a kosher, which is spiritual medicine, and even so other steps, some things that you might even have to do on your own that is not even part of the ritual process in terms of giving sacrifices and offerings. So, and that can range too. Like, you may have something that you need to do, and it may or may not cost. Some of it is just, like physical effort that you have to exert, but I should say it may or may not cost something financially. It can still cost you that effort, that time, or that energy. We don't know what's going to come up, so it's best for you to be prepared for that reality. Another question that I've gotten a lot is, what happens if someone decides to step away from receiving the hand of Ifá? So no longer want to work with Ifá, or even so the tradition, what should you do? understand that just automatically walking away doesn't mean that you're going to suffer, you're going to go through, you're going to have all these problems and things like that. Sometimes people like to instill fear in other people to kind of compel them to stay in the tradition, which is definitely not something that they should be doing, because that's not according to traditional protocol or standards. Ifa is not about fear, it's actually about alignment and balance and harmony. That's what we're trying to achieve with the tradition. That being said, right, there are times when there may be times, I won't say there are times, there may be times when certain individuals decide they no longer want the icons, they no longer want to work with the tradition as a whole. So in those cases, right, you definitely want to be considerate, all right? You have to consider how the tradition works, the process of the tradition. So anything that you receive in terms of icons, pots, sacred vessels, even so, elekis and things like that, blessed elekis, I should say, which are the idea, which means they go through a process in which they are consecrated specifically for you, right? If you get these things, you want to treat them with respect. You should never just go and put it in the trash can, right? That's not the way to do it, because these are consecrated items. They have been infused with the essence of the Orisha force, within Orisha force, if done properly, right? So I always encourage everybody to speak with your priest or priestess, okay? Whoever you're working with, they can guide you through the process of what you need to do with your sacred vessel, or even so your lekis and things like that. You should not just go and trash them. If you no longer have access to that individual for whatever reason, then possibly reach out to someone else that so that they can guide you through that process. And if you haven't been working with their person, right, they may actually charge you a fee for a consultation or something like that. So do understand that, you can't, I don't encourage just reaching out to any and everybody. Now, I'm actually going to cover that too, because I get a lot of questions along that line when somebody is working with someone else. They may be even so initiated, or they received a sacred vessel through another priest or priestess, but they like to ask questions of me and but possibly other people about the tradition. And that is usually not the best route to go down, but we're going to jump into that in the later question as well. All right. You cannot undo the hand of Ifá. Like, it's no going back. The process has been done, it's been put together. You've gone down that pathway, okay? But you can't stop practicing. You can't stop getting readings. You can't stop doing ritual work, and all the other things that come along with it. Absolutely, right? But just do so respectfully, as I said before. A lot for your greetings, everybody who is coming in. Got questions over here on Instagram. You said, is there a way for people to put evil spirits in my hand of Ifa a king? Possibly, yes. By people, are you saying the people who prepared it for you, or are you saying like somebody else in general? Um, it is possible for somebody to come and do some type of malevolent work to the device. It can happen. If elekis break, I shouldn't put them in the trash. Generally, no. I don't. I've actually had some elekis break before, and I just keep them in a little vessel. I don't put them in the trash, because you can, if they're still good, if they broke because of an issue with like craftsmanship or something like that, then you can typically have them restrung together. Now, if they broke because sometimes like the Orisha was protecting you, and in that case they may break because it shows that it was some high level engagement, energetic engagement going on. And in those particular situations, you want to speak to your owl about that, and they can tell you what to do with those. But if they just break and it wasn't any spiritual activity connected to that, I would not put them in the trash, because they still were consecrating. They still hold the essence even of their energy of that orisha, even though they're not like sequenced according to the way they were, with the patterns and everything when they were strung together originally. Okay. Somebody asked me a while ago, and it was kind of a broader question too, because I get questions similar to this as well. Like, are there daily updates whenever you are getting the hand of Ifa prepared? Um, Usually it's not required. It may be somebody's process that they do. I doubt it, because there would be a lot to update a person every time they do something in relation to their hand of Ifa. Usually they just tell them once it's done and they get it to them, however that process may look for that particular temple and that particular individual, whether it's being mailed or whether it's they may come pick it up from the temple or what have you. Okay. Understand that the preparation of this particular process is ceremonial. It's not a consultation style situation. Likewise, it's not a full-on initiation where you actually have to be there. Full-on initiation, yes, you should be getting updates throughout that time that you're there at the temple, wherever it may be, Nigeria, abroad, in the diaspora, wherever. Like, yeah, you definitely want regular communication as you walk through that particular process, but not through receiving the hand of Ifa. Usually we're talking about, actually I should put 3 days, so 3 to 10 days, right? The actual process of creating the icon is not that long. However, you have to consider where that person is as far as being able to consecrate your pot immediately once you order it. Usually that's not going to be the case if you have someone who is busy. So they should give you a general turnaround time as far as how long that process takes for them at that moment. That's absolutely what we do. We'll give an ETA when somebody gets their hand of Ifa or any icon from us, so that you're kept in the loop, and we're, updating individuals throughout the process, and definitely answering questions about the process. But again, you should not expect day to day what do you call it, interaction or engagement about what's going on. And I get questions about this too a lot. Like, what should you receive with the hand of Ifa? Any type of icon, you're going to get that consecrated icon, the vessel that it actually comes in, and then the materials that go into it for that particular orisha. So, like the sacred ikin for Arumula, and then there are other constituents for different orishas, depending on what they take, what they accept, what is normally put in their pot. You should receive a set of blessed ilakis or the ID that are connected to that particular orisha. You should be given how to work with the pot, how to care for it, how to feed it, what the orisha accepts, what they don't accept. It may be taboos or warnings that come out for you in the Odu that is pulled. It possibly will. It definitely will. You will definitely have taboos connected to that particular orisha. Again, other guidance, things like that. Everybody's situation is different, so it really just depends on your particular process, the consecration process for you, because these are established based on each and every individual. So, what you receive, the information that you receive in relation to your consecration, especially taboos and things like that, may look very different than what somebody else receives. But in general, you should expect a very high level of professionalism when receiving sacred icons such as, orisha pots and things like that, sacred vessels rather, in which case, you're going to get that vessel, the The vessel itself should be consecrated, as I said before. Likewise, the items in it. Even so, the elekis are. That's why I always say blessed elekis, because elekis just simply means beads. But the blessed or the consecration process, what activates them and makes them beneficial or useful, right? Beyond just being a piece of jewelry. So, it goes through some steps. I'm laughing because I've gotten before, like, people ask about the price of Eleki beats because they go online and they can see, like, on Etsy or something, somebody charging $7. If somebody is charging $7 for some Eleki, they're just selling a bead that has no spiritual value or worth because it wasn't consecrated. If they consecrated the Lakers for $7. Wow. Yeah, I want to know where they do that at because that's a process and it requires additional materials. You're sacrificing an animal, right? You're going to use sacred herbs and other constituents and materials in that process. So, um, yeah, all of those items are blessed, duly blessed. So I got a question here. You said if you receive an Orisha icon, is it recommended that you initiate into the Orisha? Not necessarily, right? So it really just depends on you. And that's a really good question. Thank you for that question. It really depends on your particular destiny. Some people are good if they just, like, get the hand of Ifá or get an Orisha power icon without going through full initiation. Some people need to go through the full on initiation process. It really just depends on that individual. Okay. You're saying my brother got into a fight, and when I broke it up, he accidentally swung, popped my head. What does that mean? I have no idea. I would encourage you to get a reading or a spiritual investigation or something like that. Nobody can just tell you the meaning of an event. Well, I'm not gonna say nobody can. Somebody might be psychic or intuitive, but that's not like a general question that people are going to just be able to answer for you, especially according to the tradition. And if, according to the tradition, no, they're not going to do that from an intuitive perspective. They would check with Ifá to see if it had any meaning. It could just been a physical phenomenon, right? And so it just happened, or it could have deeper meaning. Therein, you want to get that checked out, okay? Also, a final note with receiving an Orisha icon or what have you, even after it's gone through the consecration process, sometimes additional checkings are done, and you may actually have to do additional offerings based on the preparation of that icon for you. That does happen sometimes, and no, it is not a scam because I've been asked that too. Like, oh, I was asked to pay extra money because I need to give this offering, and I'd already done the whole icon or what have you. Sometimes that happens. Okay, I'm not saying that the person is not scamming you if they tell you that. I'm just saying that it did, from a traditional perspective, it absolutely occurs. So that in and of itself does not make it fraudulent. You have to look at the whole scope of what you're getting and what you're being told and what's happening in your situation to determine if somebody is scamming you or not. Okay, you're saying, how do I see if my king has good health in the Bible level? So you can get that checked as well. So obviously, you don't want to go through the Bible level that you work with, but you can have it checked from a different Bible level. We've done that on a number of occasions for people to see if their icons were properly activated, if the consecration process was done properly. In some cases, it was. In other cases, it was not. So, it's not always a guarantee that it is done properly. But, seek out help with somebody else so that they can tell you if you have questions in that area. That being said, I don't advise you to just go and do that unless you have just cause to do something like that, right? We don't want to test things out if there's no legitimate reason to. If you have a reason, like you just feel like something is going on, like this person didn't do this right for me, or it's just a feeling inside of you that it is not right, then yeah, I absolutely encourage you to go ahead and check in those cases. But if you don't have a reason to check, you just like, I'm gonna test this person out or what have you, I don't encourage that type of behavior. So you're asking too for the time in between readings, consultations, what are good methods of philosophizing your Odu beyond the spiritual and medicinal prescriptions. So we, in our process, we actually help people with that. We will show you like how your Odu is, working for you, how it's going to help you, what you can do to stay aligned and things like that, right? So if you do have specific questions about that, um, just DM me, right? And I can send you some deeper information. Just send me a DM anyway. I'll send it to you because I can help you walk through that particular situation. That being said, that's our process. Um, as far as other people's process, you would have to ask them specifically. So if somebody, and I'm saying that specifically to you as C because you work with us, but with other people, like I'm not just giving this invitation out, right? So this is only specific to people that we work with. Okay, you're asking, can I talk about Olokun? I prefer not to. I usually don't discuss individual orishas in that way, right? So I'm going to have to say no to that particular question right now. Alrighty, I got a question here. Can you do a flip? I don't know what that is. Can you explain? Maybe it was a typo. Can you explain what that means, please? All right. So now let's go into some questions that I received in relation to Ifá processes, lineage, protocol, etc. So if someone is initiated, should they ask other priests for guidance about ritual work or other Ifá concerns or needs? This happens quite often. Unfortunately, you should not be doing this for the most part, not things specific to you, right? So if you have been initiated, your initiating owl is your go-to person for pretty much all of your needs in the tradition. Okay, this is the primary point of contact for you. They're responsible for all your ritual works, any type of ceremonial work, even your traditional needs. Even if you want to just know stuff, you want to get deeper level knowledge about certain things. It's not that you can't go to other places for that, but in general, you want to start with them, right? And if they, can't help you out or what have you, then you can expand your search when it comes to instructional based things. Now, when it comes to ritual work, or crochet, other preparations, things like that that are specific to you, anything that's individualized, customized, etc., that's based on your destined path. Okay. Any taboos, life circumstances, etc., your owl knows that because they initiated you. You want to consult with that particular person when it comes to questions that you have in relation to those things, right? You do not even want to, once you get initiated, you don't want to be going from place to place to place getting ritual work done from other people because once you've been initiated, right, there are certain things that came up in your Odu or what have you that your owl has knowledge of, maybe taboos. So somebody could be doing some ritual work for you thereafter, and it could actually be violating your taboos, but they don't know that because they did not initiate you. Okay. As I said before, it's acceptable to learn from other people, general knowledge. If you want to learn more about an Orisha, like you asked about Olokun earlier. So, if you want to go and take a course to learn more about their particular Orisha, or even you want to ask somebody just for deeper level knowledge, those types of things are perfectly fine. But when it comes to something that's specific to you and your ritual work, a crochet and things like that, if you initiate with somebody, you want to go to them for those particular things. Also, I just highly discouraged to work with multiple priests at the same time unless they work together anyway, like maybe two priests that are at the same temple, and maybe you go to one when the other one is not available, things like that. But in general, you don't want to conflate things because you can cause yourself a whole lot of problems, especially when you're getting like a crochet from one person or getting, again, like I said before, ritual work, and somebody could be violating your taboos, and you don't know that. They don't know that. They're not doing it on purpose, but it happens because they don't know what came up in your ordeal, right? Um, the only logistical circumstances in which you should work with somebody else once you've initiated with a specific priest or priestess, right? I always say priest, but priestess, whoever initiated you, um, is if that person passes away, obviously you can go and seek out help from somebody else at that point. If they're unable to fulfill their responsibilities for whatever reason, maybe health challenges or they just, otherwise unavailable, right? Or you have ended the relationship. And in that case, if you end the relationship, I strongly recommend that you go through a formal process of doing so, and you don't just end it for any reason. You end it because you need to, and sometimes that happens. That's okay, right? I'm not saying stick with somebody if they're not providing for your needs, but at the same time, don't just go from hither to thither and so forth and so on. And that speaks volumes to taking your time to get to know the person that you're working with before you go down that path of initiation. But as long as that relationship is active and intact, you need to be going to them for guidance. If they can't answer your question, or if they refuse to, or they're not, providing you with the answers that you desire or that you need, I would encourage you to have a deeper discussion with them about that so that you can get your needs met. Okay. Let's see. But if you're no longer in contact with them, yeah. So I kind of answered that. If you're not for sure, I'm not saying like you're relegated to that person for the rest of your life. If the relationship is going sour, do what you got to do. But if it's intact, you should be going to them, like especially if they give you something. Because I literally get questions from people who have been given things by their owl, and they're asking me about like how to use it, how to apply it. Like the person who initiates you should be answering those questions. The person who gives you a kosher should be telling you how to use the kosher. The person who gives you an Ifá pot or an Orisha pot should be telling you how to use those things. And that's even outside of just being full on initiated. Like you could just have started practicing. That person should be giving you guidance on those things. If they're not, obviously, you're fine to go somewhere else, but just be mindful of that reality when you start working with someone. Okay. You said, what if you consult with your owl and they get mad when you ask questions? Then you're going to have to decide at that point if that is the connection that you want. And you say your owl, or you're saying, did this person initiated you, or are you saying like this is just somebody that you've been working with? Because those are different scenarios altogether. If it's somebody who initiated you, I encourage you to try your best to make amends with them and to repair that connection. If it's somebody that you're working with and they haven't initiated, initiated you, and you like, you know what, I just want to move on, you're fine to do that, right? No need to linger if it's not for you. He says, some said, what if the Oluwo of an Igbo gets mad if they ask questions? Why would you follow someone who... Yeah, that's my question. Why would you follow somebody or work with someone who is not, like tending to your needs? And it could be like it started off good, I get that, and it was working for you. And then for whatever reason, they change up. Maybe they were super nice or super good at first, and they kind of reeled you in, and they started to show their true face later on. So it just depends. He said, do you have native ancestors? How would Ifa respond to them? When you're saying native ancestors, are you saying Native American ancestors? Or are you asking me, do I personally have Native American ancestors? So if you're asking Ifa, because we do get that question a lot about genealogy and things like that. So to Ifa, you will present some options, like for instance, am I Native American? Like, do I have heritage from from America, right? As a Native American, how do you say it? Do I have Yoruba heritage? Do I have Ghanaian heritage? Things like that, right? And if I could tell you on each front, like yes or no, with whatever ones they are. You said, okay, I saw that one. Let's see. You said you love your Baba. We stay communicating. That's beautiful. That's the most beautiful thing right there. Is to, be in a connection where you are good with the person that you're working with. You're saying this happened to me. I received Ori, and to this day, I've been trying to teach myself, wow, how to properly attend to it. Unfortunately, that happens. We have on a number of occasions, because we have mentorship services where we help people out with things like that. And we have helped people to work with their icons, and fortunately they do get the help that they need, but again, that's not the ideal situation, right? Somebody gives you an icon, they should teach you how to use it. If you have the icon and it's activated and they didn't teach you how to use it, you can get help from someone else. I'm not saying not to, but I'm also saying, just be careful with who you work with at that point. Good question. That's my issue also. Thank you, Il, for explaining things. As Americans, sometimes we need things to be explained in a way that we can understand. Yes, 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 for sure. And you are very welcome. That's why I do what I do. Because, yeah, I was in this place myself before. And exactly what you said. Anybody in the diaspora, American, Caribbean, wherever you are, we're in a completely different space. And a lot of what is taught and put online, or even when you're talking to someone one-on-one, they don't get it because they were raised in it. And they often teach from the perspective of an insider, somebody who already knows what's going on, or they don't understand the deeper level or the deeper layers of information that we need because of our unique situation, right? So, yes, you are very welcome. And I'm also appreciative of others who are doing similar things as I am right now, because it is so much needed in the diaspora. Yes, you said you finally caught the live stream. I say, beautiful. Let me take a few questions. Oh, it's not questions. So you're saying greetings. Alafia, thank you for joining. I will just and YE speaks greetings, dear heart, and to everyone in the chat. Sending my love to you from Detroit. Ashe, Detroit. Greetings. Thank you for joining. Okay, so you guys have a lot of questions over here on Instagram. So let's get back to it now. So, Ori, you had asked about this before the next question that came up. Somebody said, can you ask me a while back, can you create your own Ori? And this actually the response goes to any Orisha pot. So no, in the Ifa tradition, creating an Ori icon or any Orisha icon, if you don't know what you're doing, right? And obviously, if you're asking this question, you don't know what you're doing. So this is not something that you just put together. This is not, internet-based practice where you go online and you see this lovely post about how to set up a altar to Oshun or something like that. Like those type of posts, like if they exist and they are not actual practitioners who put that together. Because no, that's just not how it works, right? Ori icons, any Orisha icons have very, very specific requirements, rites, and rituals that you have to go through. Okay, you have to go through a Babalawo or Ianifa or a priestess of that particular Orisha, right, in order to get these devices put together in the proper way. Their process involves so much more than just the physical items that you're going to put inside of it. It's rituals that go that are carried out, rites, incantations that are said, animal sacrifices, different offerings. Okay, these particular steps are designed to connect you to your destined path. It's not something that you just go and put into a pot and say hocus pocus, and all of a sudden that Orisha's energy is embedded into it. It's just not how it works. Without the proper rites, rituals, you just have a bunch of items put together. So you, want to avoid things like that. All right. Got a few more questions here on Instagram. What are the results of someone who gets an Ifá divination but decides not to do the other? Will they be able to do some behavioral changes that help? Sometimes people can be turned off by pricing. So there, a lot of times there actually are behavioral modifications that do come in the form of warnings or even so possibly taboos, right, in a reading. And so that definitely will help. But there are certain things that may not turn around in that situation whenever they avoid doing the EVO. That's why you're coming. A lot of times, often when a person gets a reading and they're dealing with a problem, they've usually tried everything that they could and nothing worked, nothing budged. And so you do the EVO in order to impact that situation for a beneficial purpose. I get what you're saying, that pricing can be a turnoff, right? But this is how you're going to pay for anything. That's the reality. You're going to pay for anything that you get, right? And so even if like you don't do the EVO, you're still going to pay for it. You're going to pay for it in loss, in blockages, in obstacles, and other problems, right? So there's nothing free. There's nothing free under the sun, guys. So you have to look at it from that perspective. Like, what do I want to pay, or what am I willing to pay? Right? If I'm having this issue, I have a spiritual blockage, I don't do the EVO because, financial reasons, especially if you have it. It's a different situation if you don't have the finances, and I get that. But if you have the finances and you just like, I don't want to pay because it costs too much, or I just don't want to pay for this, you're still going to pay for it in another way. You're going to pay by either continuously being blocked or have exacerbations of your current situation. So, it's up to you. You say, when having an Orisha shrine, do you need a level surface to place it on? Is the floor prohibited? Even your Ifá also, also if you get regular Itefa and are allowed to wear any leg representing your head or okay, I didn't get all of it, but you're saying, you want to put it on a level surface. But I'm going to tell you to, if you get a shrine, defer to the person who gave it to you as far as when it comes to setting it up. All right. But definitely you would put it on a level surface. I don't want to answer the question about the floor because somebody like that you're working with may say, no, you cannot do that. Somebody might say that you can do that. Some things are based on customs within an Ile or a house. So I only talk about what we do in our temple to the people that we work with, those icons and things like that with, in terms of like how to actually go about doing those types of things. I hope you get it. You said, if you get regular Itefa, are you allowed to wear any leki representing your head or Orisha? I don't really understand that question. Itefa is full initiation, so maybe you meant regular Idafa. right? But you don't even have to get Edafa to get Elakis, right? To wear blessed Elakis. You can get blessed Elakis without getting Edafa, which is Ifa divination for people who may not know what that means. So you can get Elakis and you can get Elakis for your head Orisha without that. Now, how do you know your head Orisha without Edafa? I don't know because that's not how to have Edafa to get your head Orisha. But maybe you're saying um you already knew your head Orisha from a different reading session and now you want to go and get Elekis for that Orisha. Absolutely, you can do that. You're saying, for instance, all Orishas have energy, so beyond the elbow, there are specific behaviors that perhaps align you more with those energies without a full ritual on a broader level. It could be, for sure. It really just depends on the scenario, right? Your behaviors are still important, even with the elbow. You don't just negate it to I'm going to go and do some sacrifices and offerings, and then I don't have to, live a certain way. I don't have to walk in evil pellet. I can violate my taboos. The behavioral modifications will come. You understand? And I get where you are coming from. In general, you want to go ahead and get your ritual work done if it's something that you need assistance with. That's all I'm going to say. Absolutely, you can not do it. You will likely, just continuously deal with the same circumstances if you don't do it. Are there times, excuse me, are there times where you can engage in behavioral modifications and you can get the desired result that you want without doing um, ritual work, the sacrifices and the offerings? Possibly. But I want to say, yes or no to that particular question because it's on an individual basis. Not so much to replace but to help. Oh yeah, like behavioral modifications are necessary to assist with that particular process. So I'll give you an example. Like you get a reading and you are having problems like with enemies or something like that, right? And it comes up that one of your warnings is for you not to get into arguments or something like that, right? You do the elbow so that you can disperse their energy from your enemies so that nobody can come and harm you. The elbow works in that regard, but you are told not to get into arguments, and you decide you want to get into arguments. Or I wouldn't even say necessarily you want to. Maybe you're just hot tempered and it's hard for you to kind of sustain yourself. In those particular cases, you get into an argument, like you can actually negate what the elbow did because the energy came and helped you out, but then you got into an argument and you went against that, right? Um, you're saying beyond the taboo. So give me an example. What you mean by that? It's just when you say beyond the taboos or the warnings. And another question, are you allowed to wear Ilekis of your head or Risha by only having, I guess you mean Idafa, or do you mean Itefa? I don't know. Or can you only do so by Orisha? Okay, so you are saying Itefa. No, you can get Orishas for, I mean, you can get blessed Ilekis for any Orisha without being initiated. That's your question. I get you now because I was very confused before. Absolutely. You can wear Lakis. Somebody just starting the tradition can go ahead and get Lakis. The Lakis are consecrated and devices that connect you to the energy of that particular Orisha. So yeah. Going back to USSC, you said, like, let's say it's something dealing with Ogun, you decide to volunteer at a veterans hospital, like a more creative way of diagnosing, just an example. So volunteering at like the veterans hospital, that actually would be more so on the line of like Egbe a lot of times because Egbe are really closely connected to charitable acts and things like that. Even so, like that's not like a easily one-to-one mesh up, right? I get where you're coming from with the example with veterans because they deal with war, but it's not necessarily to say that you're appeasing Ogun just because you go and volunteer at a veterans, place, veterans hospital. Even so, it could be taboo for you to even be there, right? You could have a warning against, you're talking about a hospital. It could be that you're not even supposed to be in a hospital or even in that particular setting. It's not something that meshes with your destined path. I won't even say taboo, but it just could be something that's just not even beneficial for you to do. And you consider it beneficial because you are volunteering, right? Which is a charitable act. Again, not necessarily associated with Ogun holistically. In some cases, it can be. I'm not saying it can't, but charity, those types of social dynamics are often more so linked to Igmeo rooms when it comes to like given to people who are less fortunate, especially children and things like that. But my point is, you would have to ask about it. Like, hey, I want to go volunteer to, help out with the Veterans Hospital. And, is this going to be helpful for me when it comes to trying to appease or connect with Ogun or whatever Orisha that you're trying to connect with? But I would ask. Because there are actually certain times where it's not good for you to be in a hospital environment, certain people at certain times, not for everyone, right? Because you could be in a position where, like at that time, that energy, if you go into a hospital, you actually get sick, you know. Okay, I understand it's an example, but I wanted to play into the reality of what that looks like, and the reality that everybody's destiny is different, and we don't make decisions like that just based on like, okay, this is my desire, and I'm trying to increase my ashe, if you will, through this particular act, because you could be going to help somebody that you shouldn't even be helping. And it could actually bring you more challenges than what you were trying to offset, right? Definitely has happened in my situation where I ended up helping somebody that at that time, I actually was not supposed to be, you know, helping somebody, giving, like charity to people at that particular time. Not like it was, I think I wasn't supposed to like let somebody borrow money or something like that, but I didn't know until after I had already done it. And so, hey, yes, I had problems from that situation. So, like practical work is sacrifice. I can get you. Have you ever heard of a issue pot to give him money to buy things together? No, I have not. And so you say basically taking the reality of the Odu and adding specific actions that are positive within your Odu. Again, you're calling them positive, and they could seem positive and benign to you, but we actually have certain taboos that would be benign to like the world in general, and you don't know that. You know what I'm saying? Or it could be a warning for you at that particular time, and you're thinking, well, I'm just going to go out here and do this because it's benevolent, but it actually could be detrimental to you. I hope you get it. Right. So it's not like positive according to Ifá. For instance, just like the example that I just gave, me, for instance, I chose to let somebody borrow money at a specific time, not knowing that it actually wasn't a good time for me to allow people to borrow money. That's a benevolent act, right? I'm helping somebody in need, according to what I thought. But it wasn't there wasn't a good time for me. It wasn't a good period for me to allow that. Okay. And so it's not really positive or negative according to Ifá. You don't put it into those buckets like that. It's about what's good for you in for your particular destiny at that particular moment, right? So, even so, like for me, that wasn't like a permanent taboo or something like that. It was just for that moment in time that I shouldn't let people borrow money. But later on, well, I don't know about now specifically because I haven't checked, but I could go and check, and it's perfectly fine for me to allow somebody to borrow money. So that's why it's not really aspect from a perspective of this is positive or this is negative. I understand where you're coming from, right? Because, if you come in, especially from a Christian background where, alms giving and things like that is a good thing, right? You're supposed to give charity. And giving charity is even so good in the tradition. But there are times when you shouldn't do it because it's actually detrimental for you. I hope you get what I'm saying. You asking me about appeasing one's ori. I'm actually going to get to that. It's a question that I get often, and I will speak about it, but I have it in my notes, so I'm going to get to that then. All right, perfect. Sorry, guys. I hope y'all understood what I was saying. The next question. Do Ifá priests and priestesses ever say that they need to consult further or that more information is required before they answer something? Definitely. Sometimes that may happen. Understand that Babalawo or the Nifa is not speaking on their own recognizance. They're not doing an intuitive reading. They are consulting with a Rumula. And there's a specific way to consult and ask specific questions to flesh out the details of information. All right. So sometimes, like, it may require additional consultation, clarification from you, even so, or they may have to ask better questions or different questions to get to the root of what they need to know, right? And this is why it's very important for you to be properly trained and working with somebody who is properly trained when it comes to an Ifá reading so that they can flesh the answers out properly, or even so ask the question, because that happens too. Sometimes people ask questions during Ifá divination, but the question that they are asking is not really getting to the heart of the answer that they are seeking, right? And so sometimes it takes them back and forth with the owl to flesh out what they are actually asking. And it's no fault on the client because they just don't know what they don't know, or they don't understand how to properly phrase that question to get the answer out. And so that's part of the job of the Babalawo or the Nifa to really get to the heart of the matter so that they can get them the answer that they need to make the best decisions, right? So if you get a reading, the information feels vague, right? Usually just means that you need to tailor that inquiry so that it does get to the heart of whatever you're trying to ask. Okay. If you're working with somebody who doesn't have the skills to really, flesh out the answer and things like that for you, they should be working with a network of priests or priestesses in a temple environment where they can consult with someone else so that they can get you the best information and details that you need. That's one of the reasons why, working with the tradition from a traditional perspective is, I can say, better in a lot of regards, because in the diaspora we tend to have people who work in silos, and if you're working in a silo, you can't always help people out to the highest level. But even if somebody's like new, they're just starting, they should still have a network behind them so that they can go to that network and flesh out the details of the question. You should not be relegated to going to somebody else to get the information that you need if you're already working with somebody in particular. Relationships that just don't work no matter what you put into it, just don't work. Can you speak on it? So possibly it sounds like it could be a room issue. It could be a number of things. So I'm not saying it is that, but that is a telltale sign of somebody having a spiritual spouse. I covered this in depth in a different live stream, so I'm not going to go too deep into it now. But if you are having relationship issues, the best thing to do is to just go and get that checked out, right? Because it could be a role, it could be a spiritual spouse, but it could also be a number of other things. Could any other force, right? It could be a negative spell, some negative spell word, a curse or something like that that has been placed on you in relation to your connections, your partnership bonds, and things like that to keep them from working. The only way to truly know is through divination. Okay. So, Ori, so you guys asked about this. This is what you asked about before. How to appease Ori. And appeasing Ori is the same thing as aligning with Ori. Traditionally, you do this through Ibori. Ibori is a specific ritual to help to feed your specific Ori. So you're gonna see what Ori needs in that particular case, what sacrifices and offerings, and once you check that out, then you just proceed to go through that process. Work with a priest or a priestess who can give them the proper your Ori rather the proper sacrifices and offerings that it needs in order to help you. Otherwise, you definitely want to spend time in self reflection. Your aura is your head, okay? It's your inner self. So you want to spend time connecting with it, even on a one on one basis, beyond just the ritual work. The ritual work is traditional, is to help bring about balance, to help you get that energy connected, to help appease your aura if you've done something and aura is blocking their reality, or even so just on a regular one-on-one basis. It doesn't have to be that you're being blocked. Just taking care of your aura, your head, is just always a good thing, period. um but otherwise, spend time in self-reflection and pray to your aura, talk to your aura every day. Okay. Daily prayer that I recommend to or read, you're gonna have to DM me about it. I don't put that type of information out in the public sphere. Okay. But yes, because we do a lot of consultation, things like that with people that we work with, and we provide them with that deeper level of knowledge. So yes, but you can DM me and we'll talk about it. Okay. Um, Going back to what I was saying, maintain good character, walking evil pele, right? Your actions should be upright, integrous, things like that. Making good decisions for yourself, for the people around you, your loved ones, your family, etc. Okay. Definitely, you're getting Ifá readings and things like that. You get warnings, you get taboos. Follow them to the best of your ability. If you violate them for whatever reason, check back to see what you need to do, because you may need to do some type of a appeasement so that you can balance yourself out again. Okay. Caring for your actual physical head. As I said before, your physical head is a container for your inner head, your ori that's with you. You have your ori in a room in heaven as well. All of these are divine aspects of you, and you want to take care of them, right? Like literally washing your hair, right? Your hair is sitting on top of you. Washing your hair, washing your head, right? Cleansing yourself, proper hygiene, things like that. Okay. Mindfulness, taking care of your body, even, right? Because your head is at the top, your head leads everything that you do. So properly caring for yourself, all of those things are actually part of appeasing worry. Because when you take care of yourself, your health, your mental status, your emotions, your things like that, you are able to better fulfill your destiny, what you came to this earth for. If you're not taking care of yourself properly, you're more prone to problems, to health conditions, to mental health problems, to emotional situations that can take you off course, because then you're worried about those things. All right. You worried about, when your health is not well, then you got to be concerned about your financial situation. When you are thinking about everything else, you cannot get to the space of self actualization. Okay. If anybody's familiar with the, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, when you're focused on those base needs, your physiological needs, you cannot connect with your higher self in the best way, right? And your higher self, that's all about self actualization, coming to do what you actually came to this earth to fulfill your divine purpose. Instead, you're ingrained in those, lower level functions and needs. You're just trying to make it. You're trying to live. You're trying to get your finances together. You're trying to connect with people to find a sense of belonging and things like that. And you don't want to be stuck in that space forever. All right. And there's times that people are still, are going to maybe deal with those types of things, but you don't want to perpetually be in that space, because if you are, you can't get to that higher level thought process to connect with your divine purpose while you came here. This is, to me, a major reason why so many people in the diaspora are suffering so much, is because we are constantly in that space of dealing with the lower aspects, right? That root chakra energy, that we're not able to, get up here and connect with the crown, with the third eye energy, or what have you. And that's purposeful. That is by design that we're dealing with these situations. That's by design that, most, not most, all Black communities worldwide are in poverty and things like that, because the financial situation keeps people tied to just the material realm, constantly just trying to get by and make it. And they don't really have time to sit back and reflect and meditate and connect with their highest level of energy. Much love to you too, Renoverse. Good to see you. It's been a while. Thank you for joining. Okay. What is the relationship between a person's Ori and their Odu, and the Odu, or their Odu in Ifá? It says their Odu. So, Ori is that your, personal head, your inner head, rather, your destiny, right? It chooses your life path, where you're going to go. As I just said before, you have your inner head, you have your higher self, your physical head being the container for your inner head. The Odu is part of the larger Ifá corpus, right? Contains the parables, the proverbs, the mythological narratives, warnings, taboos, remedies, solutions, instructions for us to live the best life that we can possibly live. And it helps us to discern and understand our destined path much better, where we are, what we should be doing. That's what comes out when you get an Ifá reading. Likewise, the Odu is there for you to get inspiration from. You can absolutely, read it and apply certain aspects to your life, especially if you're dealing with certain challenges or what have you. We produce, the Odu in a very structured format on the website. All of that is free. So definitely check that out, guys. Asanee44.com. Every week we do the long form Odu posts. We actually have all 256 Odu outline, right, on the website, but we're, constantly updating and adding different resources related to this, because I think it's just so important for us to have as much of the knowledge as we can in, certain spaces, so that we can learn, what our ancestors set forth, and what they learned through their spiritual connections. We can get that wisdom on a day-to-day basis, right? 256 total Odu, right? Many thousands of verses, more verses than you can ever, I would say, even so innumerable, because the Odu is known by people, in so many different spaces. Nobody has all of the information. It's not like the Bible in the perspective that is finite from what we know. Even so, like what people call the Bible today is not actually what was once considered the Bible, because the Apocrypha is part of that. That's the hidden knowledge that is not available in the standard Bible. Even so, the Odu was something that has been memorized and passed down for, generation to generation, and it spread all throughout West Africa, even so, because you have the Yoruba people groups in Nigeria for sure. That's what most people always say, but it's always, I mean, it's also Benin, Ghana, Togo, and some surrounding regions where you also have the knowledge of Ifa or Fa or whatever it is called in that Alpha, even so they use that terminology, whatever it's called in their particular region. And so you have so many people spread far and wide with this particular knowledge, right? And that's what makes up the Odu, right? So you get those Odu messages through Ifa divination, as I said before, that apply specifically to your circumstances. But as I said before, you can read the Odu and still get wisdom and encouragement and inspiration from it. All right. When you get it through Ifa divination, it applies to you, it gives you lessons, it gives you details about your destiny that you should be following. Okay. In terms of the connection between Ori and Odu, they're oftentimes discussed in the same setting or the same context because they work so closely together. Like Ori, the Odu presents your destiny that you chose beforehand, and Ori is what chose that destiny. I think too, maybe the question came from the confusion because yeah, there's a lot of Yoruba words that start with O, and so it's easy to conflate some of the terminology, Oreo, do, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it was just more so a question connected to just fleshing out the details of both of those scenarios. Got a question on Instagram. Does it mean anything to receive any of the 16 major Odus for receiving for divination? If so, what? No, I mean, it's just that's what came out for you at that particular time. It's not like it's something special because a major Odu versus a derivative Odu came out. Any Odu that comes out is important and you should follow it if that's the question that you're asking. Okay. Got a few questions about the Orishas, so let's jump into these. Now, the first question: are the Orishas deified humans, or are they parables? That's what it's supposed to be. Sorry, the question wasn't written well, and that's my fault because I didn't go back in and check it. So, some Orishas are considered to be deified ancestors, not all of them. That being said, some people don't believe even the ones that are considered to be deified ancestors that they were literal human beings. Okay, Orishas are elemental forces, right? They represent nature. They represent different attributes and different energetic forces that are within us, that are around us. Okay, so you're going to have to understand that a lot of the mythological narratives and things like that, the stories that we have are considered to be parables. Okay, they are meant to teach lessons. They are meant to guide us along our journey. All right. Everybody doesn't consider them to be have actually lived in human form. Okay. If you kind of if you think about it from the perspective, this is the way I look at it personally. So you have a whole lot of indigenous knowledge systems, especially throughout the continent, right, of how things came to be. You're going to have deities or divine forces associated with all the various aspects of nature. They're not all going to come from the same Yoruba context and story. So, we talk about, water, the formation of waters and things like that. All of that in African culture is not connected to Oshun's manifestation. Okay. Same thing with Ogun, the god of war. The same narratives don't exist worldwide. So you have to consider that reality and understanding that. Even so, in a lot of the cultures, they'll say that these particular forces originated in their lands and their regions. I think a lot of it just comes from people conflating mythological stories that at the time people knew, like the ancestors knew, like we're telling this story so that we can contextualize this information, right? It's very similar to somebody watching a movie. But then over time, and especially through colonization efforts and slavery and things like that, a lot of the things got contorted. And so we're dealing with a reality now that, some people take these the stories and the narratives literally, and some people don't. It's completely up to you how you see it, right? These are energetic forces that all of them live. I think that's a question that you have to answer according to your own knowledge base, right? Another thing too, you got to understand some of these stories, these narratives were intentionally presented as the Orishas were intentionally presented as humans who had lived deified ancestors for political purposes. It was basically to sway certain people to do things in certain ways, similar to the way, we're told the narrative about, Jesus existed, and, we're supposed to live a certain way and do certain things because of, what Jesus came. He came to be the ultimate sacrifice and so forth and so on. And even so, that is definitely based on mythology, but it's based on the Son. Jesus is talking about the S-U-N, even though the Bible converted him to the S-O-N. Point being, a lot of the mythological narratives kind of happen in the same way during ancient times, and now people are taking a lot of these stories to be literal, right? And so it's not always that way. It's sort of like, even so, watching like a documentary. Any documentary that you watch, there's going to be a bit of sensationalism about it. So everything isn't perfect, 100% truth. It's blended with the truth to present a holistic story, but also to keep you encapsulated in that story, in that narrative, so that you keep watching, right? And so, there's even a higher level of that went on with these narratives from historical times, because they were passed down orally, right? So you don't even have like one movie where you sit in front, everybody in front of that movie or that documentary, and they're hearing and seeing the exact same thing, no matter when they watch it. It's even much different than that, right? So, and then too, you have some infusion of, colonialism, colonial myths, and things like that, even in Nigeria, because yes, it was colonized. There were certain places that were protected, and there's a whole lot more integrity with the tradition in those areas, but it's not 100% perfect either. You're asking, is there a difference in how you venerate the Yarmul versus the deified Orishas? You venerate them according to the tradition, right? So each Orisha has a different way in terms of what they accept, what their icon looks like, how their worship is carried out. So not necessarily. And you say deified Orisha, I don't know what you mean by that, because even the primordial Orishas, some of them are considered to be deified ancestors as well, by some people, not by me, but by some people. Alafia, Hidden Beauty, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate you. Deified ancestors, you mean? It is really and truly you're gonna Orisha worship is different from Orisha to Orisha. All right, there's definitely some similarities and some foundational things that happen, but each Orisha has its own taboos, has its own acceptable offerings, has its own icon. They don't look the exact same, so that's just how it goes. Okay, so you're saying are there separate veneration practices for the different aspects of Shango? Possibly. I don't know specifically. Even so, when you're saying veneration practices, there are also even regional and local variations, right? So everybody doesn't do things the exact same way. This is why you do have a lot of discrepancies in information when it comes to online things. A lot of the practices are going to be situated locally, even in Nigeria. So you can go from one community to the next in Nigeria, and worship practices, veneration practices will look a little bit different from space to space. Okay, so you're saying why is oil associated with the marketplace in the diaspora? Very good question. Not in Nigeria, right? So this is a good question. Oil, I honestly like. I don't know where that diaspora notion came from. I don't know. Oil is about quick, swift movement. And if you look at how the market operates, even so the stock market, definitely the regular market, like where people go and buy things and sell, but even the stock market, things are volatile. They're moving, they're shifting, money goes up and down, it moves. So she does play a role in that aspect of it because of volatility. But she is not said to rule the marketplace from a solely financial perspective in Nigeria in the same way as she is said to rule in the diaspora. Again, a lot of it has to do with so many shifts and changes in the tradition. Definitely, there's a whole lot of things in the diaspora that are just so different than what they are in Nigeria. And even so, like I said, even in Nigeria, from region to region, you're still going to have discrepancies. It's not just because it's in Nigeria or it's in Ghana, Benin, Togo, where have you, that everybody is practicing the exact same way. There are some locality shifts. There are some, commonly held knowledge and wisdom, maybe about an Orisha or what have you, in one area that may not be commonly known or commonly spoken about in a different region. But there's a whole lot of stuff in the diaspora that has shifted, and I don't think that that's just from the natural transition of the tradition. Instead, is because of the volatility of what happened here in the American in the diaspora, right? You have a lot of people mixing things together. This is why you see a lot of like non Ishe things go on in the diaspora, because you'll see a lot of the Orishas conflated with other deities from other traditions or systems here in the diaspora. Okay, so let's see. You said you wanted to know if people differentiate the practice. They do. There are discrepancies, and even you'll have people arguing about, no, it's like this, it's like that, and they could both really and truly be correct. It just really depends on the scenario, your level of knowledge, what teachings that you have. That's why I don't get into arguments with people about, oh no, it's this way or it's this way. Like, people were all taught different things. My purpose in anything is like the practicality of it. Is it working for you? Right. Like, if it's not working for you, the rest of it doesn't even make a whole lot of difference. Um, let's see. Let's see. Okay, over time, through cultural changes, historical disruptions, as I said before, some people began to understand the narratives as being literal, and so that's kind of how that got translated. Now, the next question: are people required or forced to give Orisha offerings at specific times during specific periods? I've gotten this question in so many different ways. People have been told, like, you have to give offerings during festival periods, or you have to give offerings to certain deities like every particular month or time frame or period or what have you, so forth and so on. And so I just want to kind of address it as an all encapsulated question here. So there's never a time where you're forced to give any particular Orisha anything. It's all up to you what you do. Nobody should be compelling you to do it. The Orishas don't compel you to do it. It's completely up to you. It's based on what you want from your circumstances. Even when they are prescribed during divination feedback or, what have you, you can you can do it according to when you want to. Even the calendar a lot of people go by, that's another thing that has a lot of discrepancies, right? Even if you're going by the Orisha calendars and stuff like that you find online, you're not relegated to following those things. It is up to you. You should always do what you're comfortable with doing too. That's another thing I preach. Like, don't go out here and get yourself in a situation that you cannot handle just because somebody's telling you that you must do this and you must do it right away. Even if, like, you get a reading and it says that death is imminent, and it can happen. It does happen, right? Um, if you want to live, definitely go ahead. If you want to live and not have those, challenges connected to that energy, definitely go ahead and give the offerings if that's what you want, but you're not even forced in those cases to do that. Don't let anybody threaten you into doing anything. Okay. Communal festivals, ceremonial periods, things like that, definitely include offerings, sacrifices, and so forth and so on. But it is voluntary, it is up to you. It's a high energetic time. I would encourage you to give during those times if you can, because you probably will receive many, many blessings and benefits from doing so. But again, you should never do so out of fear, pressure, or any type of obligatory stance or what have you, because that's not how the tradition works. Okay. Transitioning to the ancestors and Ifá practice, different aspects of Ifá practice, right? So, where should someone begin when they feel called to heal, but they do not know what steps to take? Ancestral healing should have been there. So it should begin, right, with you understanding what's actually going on. If you have, and I'm not talking about general ancestral veneration here. I'm actually talking about, healing some trauma from your past, generational curses or generational patterns, whatever you decide to call, what's going on, right? So I would always encourage you to do it from a perspective of divination. You can do Ifá divination, you can do an ancestor reading, you can even do an Orisha reading, depending on what you practice and what you're connected to understand what's going on in your bloodline so that you can take the proper steps to heal it, okay? Because even so, a lot of times people think it's ancestral. You may not know, it may not be ancestral, and you don't know until you get spiritual insight, because it actually could be a problem with your Ori. It could be a problem with your ancestors. It could be a problem with you violating your taboos. It could be other unresolved obligations or agreements that you haven't taken care of, especially when it comes to things like Igbe Orun and so forth and so on. So you may be thinking that this is something generational or ancestral, and it is not. Like a few questions that you guys asked me before, some of the stuff you just have to go and get checked when it comes to you personally. You don't want to just guess when it comes to certain things, and unless somebody is like an intuitive reader or something like that. But again, Ifá is not about doing intuitive or readings on that particular level. But if somebody does intuitive readings and you trust them, you feel like they can give you that knowledge or that insight, it's best for you to go and seek that out, not just try to guess and say, well, it's this, and I'm going to go and make my decision based on that. Okay. Let's see. So, yeah, I would definitely encourage you all on that level. You're asking me explaining ancestral veneration in ceremonies. You're going to have to get a little bit more specific there. What do you mean by ancestor veneration? Are you specifically talking about within the Ifá tradition or just in general ceremonies? I need you to be specific because that's a really, really broad topic. Saying, hey, is there such thing as people being the child of Orunmila, like people a child of Shango and Oshun? Absolutely, yeah. So your head Orisha can be Orunmila, or Ifa is often referred to in the tradition. Can someone honor their ancestors in Ifa while still worshiping or praising Jesus? Okay, so and so let me answer this real quick. So you saying yes in general ceremony. You still have to be specific. What are you talking about in terms of ancestor veneration and ceremonies? Like, what's your specific question? Because that topic is so broad and I don't know specifically what you're asking me there. Okay, so going back to the topic at hand, can someone honor their ancestors when it comes to, like, you know, also sticking with, Jesus or what have you? And this is all encompassing. The question was framed from the context of Jesus or what have you, or Christianity, but it applies to any religion at the end of the day. So in evil practices, worshiping or integrating non-traditional deities is not standard protocol. That being said, some people do choose to continuously work with Jesus, Allah, Buddha, or any other um, deity or tradition or what have you. It's a personal decision. It is not forbidden at all. When it comes to working with Ifa, you can do so. We work with not. I work with plenty of people who are still into Christianity. They come and get Ifa readings. They do work through the tradition. However, they don't full on practice Ifa in their particular way. Okay, but you can still practice if you want to. You're not relegated to just the Ifa tradition. It is not like Christianity in that, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the light, so to speak, right? Um, so many people come from Christian backgrounds to the Ifa tradition. That's especially the case with those of us in the Western world. That's normally the case. We come from Christian backgrounds and, the Middle East area, places like that. A lot of people come from Islam or what have you. So, it's okay. You don't have to leave your tradition, your religion, if you don't want to. It's up to you. It wasn't for me to stay in that when I was getting away from it, period, point blank. But it's not like you are forced to, you have to leave Jesus alone if you want to work with the tradition. No, it's not like that. Okay. And also understand it's a learning process. You're going to take your time through it. I don't encourage anybody to just cut everything off if that's not good for them. Everybody has their threshold, so everybody has to work with it according to what they feel like is best for them. Let's see. Aside, you're asking, is Itefa needed to find out one's taboos? To find out your permanent taboos, yes, but you can. So sometimes naturally in a reading, certain taboos will come up. Our Odessa is responding. He's saying Isefa is to strengthening your relationship connection with a Romulan spirit. Any taboos or warning given during Isefa, you're saying they are temporary. They could actually be permanent, but you consider them temporary from that space. But he was actually asking about Itefa, not Isefa, right? Okay. Yes. So he was asking about full initiation. You're referring to receiving the hand of Isefa. Okay. So got a few questions that I've gone through on Instagram. I gotta get my screen back right over here. You said, how do child of Arumula act? What common trouble do they deal with? I'm going to encourage you to go to our website. I do have a few articles about Arumula. I don't really like to talk about individual Orishas in this context, right? So I would encourage you to go ahead and look that up because I know I have at least one article on there that talks about Orunmila in depth, in great depth. Okay, let's see. You said you were initiated, you received your Odu information online regarding your Odu, but it was never mentioned during the taboo. For example, taboo says not to eat Obi, but it was not told to me that the taboo associated with a specific Odu applies to the person if it's not mentioned. So there are plenty of taboos, right, for anyone Odu. All of them will not apply to you specifically. The taboos that you were told belong to you during your initiation experience, that's what belongs to you. You should never go in any general, guide online or book or something like that and read about an Odu, for instance, and use that as your guiding force. You need to go back to the person who initiated you. If they already gave you the taboos, right, and they didn't mention the ones that you saw, 9 times out of 10, those other ones don't belong to you. But if you have questions about the other taboos, you go back to that person and ask them, like, is this actually one of my taboos? But yeah, you can't read the Odu from that perspective and apply it to yourself in a general context because there's certain, even you're given a specific Odu, there's certain aspects of that Odu that apply to you and certain aspects that don't apply to you, right? Okay, so let's see. Going back, can someone who follows Ifá still observe Christian or other religious holidays, right? So, perfect time. We're in holiday season. I get asked this quite often as well. So, observing holidays is a personal choice, all right? You can do whatever you like. It's not prohibited in the tradition at all. Ifá does not police or prohibit participation in non-traditional observances or events. So it's completely up to you. Few more questions related to identity, personality, belonging, etc. when it comes to the tradition. Okay. So one question I didn't put it on here, but the question was actually related to, why doesn't Ifá or African tradition, not Ifá, but why don't African traditions work in the same way as Christianity? So before you start that comparison, right? What is the question is what are you talking about working? What does that mean, right? Because I've gotten this question in various forms throughout the years as well. Right. A lot of people say working as a measure of material success, right? They want to see results, they want to see money, they want to see love, they want to see most of it has to do with like just the finances, right? A good job, a nice house, a car, and things like that, right? And so we have to understand that that's not why you practice, should not be why you practice any religion. But when you go into ATR in general, you're coming in it to fulfill your destiny. It's about alignment, right? And balance. Your destiny may not look like you being super rich or wealthy. Okay. It may be even so you just have enough money to get by and you live good, but you're not going to be, a millionaire, a billionaire, or something like that. But you are able to take care of yourself and your family. You don't want for anything. But that doesn't mean that everybody's destiny is about to have this huge house, this big fancy car, and things like that. Okay. Even so, my question is when you say working from Abrahamic an Abrahamic traditional perspective, who do you consider that to be working for? Is it working for African Americans or diasporans in general? Because the reality is that you got a lot of people who practice Christianity and Islam and other religions within the African diaspora who suffer tremendously. Okay, they suffer, and from a material perspective, definitely suffer from marginalization, systematic oppression. All right, that exists regardless of what what religion that you practice. Okay. So likewise, material wealth. There are people who have material wealth and practice so many different religions. There are absolutely people who practice African traditional religions who are very wealthy, extremely wealthy. So we can't just look at it from one perspective like that. Financial success is really linked to your destined path, or if you decide to circumvent that and like force your way into certain things, and then therein you're getting outside of traditional Isheshe practice. All right. But your destiny, you were called to live a certain way. Everybody was just not destined to be wealthy, right? That doesn't even fit with a hierarchical society that we live in. If everybody was rich, then there would be nobody to do functional level work at all, right? So you got to think about the reality of what that looks like. All right. Um, let's see. So that being said, ATRs, they are absolutely effective. I've seen it be effective in my life. I know plenty of other people who have experienced effectiveness from it. Most of the time, when people ask that question, is from the context of they don't have like the material wealth that they have. But if you come to ATR, it could be about resolving so much more in your life beyond just the material aspects of it. All right. You're saying the only reason black people are Christians is because of enslavement and colonization? Absolutely. That's the only reason. Because if we were still before the European came and took our land and us and so forth and so on, we were practicing our traditions, and we probably still would be practicing our traditions, as you see other indigenous people groups doing worldwide. You still see Asian people practicing Buddhism. You still see the Indians practicing Hinduism, things like that. Now, definitely, too, they have some challenges in certain areas when it comes to the integrity of their traditions being 100% intact. Part of that is definitely through colonization efforts and so forth, but a lot of it too is due to just the evolutionary process. Even so, our traditions, things evolve, things change, and so there are going to be changes in the traditions based on that. Okay. Um, you see, how does possession look in people? It depends on the person and the situation. It can look so many different ways. Are you saying voluntary transposition, or are you saying like involuntary possession? It can look so many different ways. Okay, guys, I am getting ready to close up this session. If you do have a few lingering questions, I think I'm going to take just about three because I do have to transition off shortly. Um, so if you have them, please put them in the chat window. The number one thing I'm going to encourage people to do is to just take your time, learn, observe, try to understand the tradition, especially when it comes to working with somebody in the tradition, or Babalawo and Ianifa and Olarisha or something like that. Take your time to explore, to get to know that person, to make sure that you vibe with them. Just because somebody is practicing the tradition, or if they're capable of doing the work for you, that doesn't mean that they vibe with you or they connect with you. So just take your time, know what you want out of the situation, and take your time before you just go and start to make certain connections, especially before you go through that threshold of getting initiated with someone, because that's a very, very important and significant event or ceremony in your life. And once you cross that threshold, you're connected to that person, and that person should be providing your needs, not you having to go everywhere else to get your needs met. Not just, I'm not saying that they have to provide you with all education and information that you get in the tradition, because that's absolutely unrealistic. But they should be providing for your ritual needs. For if they give you anything, if anybody gives you anything, right? Even if you're not initiated, they should be the one answering questions for you about what they give you. As always, guys, if you are looking for, deeper level support, you want to align with your Ori, with your destiny, definitely check us out on the Asanee 44 website. We have plenty of resources and tools there to help you gain deeper understanding. A lot of you guys who asked about the Orishas, definitely we have some free resources there. And we also have some courses that you can dig into if you want to know more about those particular Orishas. As I said in the last live stream, because I actually wasn't going to do today, but I thought about it and I was like, I want to come on and do, a session, but I didn't want to make it too intensive for me. So we are going to come back in 2 weeks. Shadow work in Ifá. You are very welcome, guys. You're saying thank you for answering our question. You're very welcome. You're very welcome. SC, everybody who is saying thank you. You're very, very welcome. I appreciate you all for showing up. I wish you all many, many blessings. If you celebrate the Gregorian New Year, Happy New Year to you. I don't, for the sake of those who do, absolutely. I wish everybody many blessings as we transition, even so, out of the fall into the winter, because that's what we just celebrate. Well, people just celebrated with Christmas. I don't celebrate Christmas, but that's what people actually just celebrated, even so, top of the season. And I will see you all in January if Olodumare blesses us to be here still. Ashe. Have a very blessed and beautiful day and beyond, guys.